So why isn't housing dirt cheap? And the answer is government.
I remember the struggles. It was, you had to work for everything that you have.
Some people have said that you can be a bit aggressive or polarizing. They have drawn comparisons to Donald Trump. What is your reaction? Welcome to the C-Suite. I'm Camila Gonzalez, and I've had the honor of interviewing everyone from athletes to artists to changemakers from around the world and all walks of life. As Canada faces a pivotal moment with an election just 3 weeks away, I thought it would be important to meet someone who hopes to become Canada's next Prime Minister. Mr. Pierre Poilievre and his wife Ana joined us to talk a bit more about their life, their family, and their vision for Canada, as we get to know the person behind the public figure. So today I am sitting with someone who in just about 3 weeks hopes to become Canada's next Prime Minister, Mr. Pierre Poilievre, and his lovely wife, Miss Ana Poilievre. Welcome, how are you?
Great to be here. Just got into town from the Sioux and looking forward to some meetings in town, and we're having fun. We're about halfway through this adventure.
Yes, it's been a busy few weeks, so I brought you my favorite source of caffeine, some matcha. Have you tried this before?
Matcha, yes. Not this one in particular, but
Okay, I think let's
give it a
try.
try.
Give it a
I'm
taste.
gonna do a little cheers.
I'm more of a
here.
coffee guy,
it a
but
try.
I'm open-minded, so we'll give it a shot.
cheers.
Salud.
Salud. Español. Salud.
Salud. I figured this is a good
Very
pick-me-up.
Very smooth.
Very good.
So I need to know, you've been traveling around the country, having conversations with so many different Canadians. How do you find the energy?
What do you think?
I'll take inspiration from you. Pierre has been doing this for 3 years, and he's been relentless about it. And I think we take energy from the crowds and the purpose.
It's been really electric. We've had unbelievable crowds. I think we in Edmonton the other day, we had somewhere between 10 and 15,000 people. And we've had similarly large numbers across the country. And people are coming out because they finally have hope. They feel like it's been a really awful decade. Their lives have been falling apart, and they're starting to lose hope, but now they're regaining it. And they feel like there's a chance around the corner that they might be able to own a home, afford their rent, afford groceries again, have a neighborhood they feel safe in. And so when we come into these rallies, we see more than anything is a lot of overflowing hope, which is really satisfying. So
Yeah.
I think it's going well.
And we've seen Cruz and Valentina join you on stage, join you on this crazy adventure. Do they understand what's happening? Do they know why there are thousands of people screaming at their parents?
No, I don't know if you have any idea.
No, they're enjoying it though. It's nice to have the family united. It's 37 days, and I think it was important for the both of us to make sure that we had that family unit. And Cruz is loving it. He's stealing Daddy's microphone.
Yeah, he literally steals the microphone.
So it's nice to have them. And there's 6. Valentina's 6. Cruz is 3. So Valentina is nonverbal, so it's hard to gauge what she really understands. And Cruz is he just thinks everybody's Daddy's friends.
Yeah, that's what he said the other
Valeuales
day.
de mi papa. Valeuales de mi papa. He says all the time.
Yeah, because we were driving past the lineup at our last rally the other day, 2 rallies ago, and he looked out the window and he said, "There's Dad's friends." And but he comes onto the stage and he does the big walk-in, and then he doesn't want to leave the stage.
He doesn't.
When we get up there. And then he wants the microphone.
Yeah.
He loves the microphone. So pretty soon he'll be giving his own speeches.
That's amazing. And for Valentina, I can imagine your family plays a big role now in terms of taking care of them and being around them with so much going on.
Yeah, so we have Tia Maria, Tia Nena, who is there with us. When the kids are there, she's there because, it's important to have the family united, and she's a huge help. We couldn't do it without her, so.
They do take an incredible amount of load off us because we're just running from one thing to the next, and all the little creature comforts and needs of a munchkin. We just physically can't do it. So she helps with feeding them, changing them.
And they feel
Make sure
loved,
Yeah, and it's a family member.
family.
It's special to have someone who's part of the family on the road. And I guess that's when you marry a Latin woman, you marry the whole family. And but we've been very
There's
blessed.
the benefit.
There are big benefits to that.
And so we're going to get into, of course, your vision for Canada, the future, a few of the policies that you've proposed, but I want to get to know a little bit more about that core family that we've spoken about. Can we go back to when you were young in Alberta? adopted by two school teachers. Talk to us about what it was like just growing up.
So I was born to a 16-year-old single mother, and she had just lost her mother to a heart attack. Her mother was, I think, in her 40s. So she had wanted to keep me, but she couldn't. So she put me up for adoption. She then got pregnant a couple of years later with my brother, and then she also couldn't keep him. So she asked that he go to the same family. So my adoptive brother is also my biological half-brother. So it's a complicated mix. But anyway, my folks were school teachers. Mother was a substitute. We grew up in a time that was very tough in Alberta. There was a huge national recession, and it hit Alberta very hard. Interest rates went up. So my mother, who is a very disciplined lady, she had saved up all her 20s to buy a home and buy rental properties. So by the time she was in her 40s, she had 2 rental properties, and her and my dad had a house. Lost it, everything. Just rates went up to like 17%. And so we then had to scramble and get a loan from our grandparents to get a smaller place. And my earliest memories are kind of those struggles, of the stress my parents were suffering in that time, a car that was breaking down that we couldn't afford to fix, and sports that I would love to have asked my parents to join, but they couldn't afford the registration. We were never poor, but it was just a struggle, like most people in that time. My folks gave me a good upbringing. We always fed us well. They encouraged us, and they told us that if we worked hard, that we could do what we wanted, but that it would take hard work. There was not going to be any freebies or fortunes handed down to us. They would give us a springboard, but it was up to us to jump. And so that gave me I think good lessons that I took with me. My mother was also very good with money. She was tight. She knew how to stretch a dollar.
With coupons.
Yeah, she used to have these cute coupon books, and she would drive all over town to save 20% on this and 15% on that. And I think that stuck with me because I've always believed in spending within your means. And it probably comes from growing up in a family where there wasn't room to waste. And so I consider myself very blessed with the upbringing that I had.
And that childhood that you had is very different from the childhood that now Cruz and Valentina have. What values and lessons did you learn at that time in Alberta that you're now kind of bringing over as a father?
Yeah, I think about that a lot. I want to make sure that for Cruz in particular, that life doesn't just come easy to him. I want him to have to work for things. I want him to know that that life takes effort, and that you have to respect everybody. You can't. You have to respect the people who do the work in this world. And I don't want to raise kids that are spoiled. I mean, I've seen families where they're very fortunate, and as a result, they heap a lot of freebies on their kids, and then the kids grow up thinking that stuff just happens rather than having to work for it. And I don't think that's doing them any favors. So I hope, he's only 3 now. We can't kick him out and make him get a job yet. But as soon as he's old enough, I want him to get a job. I want him to earn his pocket change. I want him to be a disciplined young man. And Valentina, of course, she comes with a lot of extra special challenges. She's still nonverbal at age 6, but so she doesn't really understand exactly what's going on in our world, in our political world, and the job I have. But she's a very special girl. She is extremely authentic. Kids like her, the gift they bring is that what you see is what you get. They don't put on any acts. Like if they're angry, they scream. If they're happy, they smile. If they're sad, they cry. And if they like you, they'll hug you. If they don't, she won't waste 5 seconds. And so it's nice to have that, because in politics there's so much artifice and so much fakery. It's the pure authenticity of Valentina is really special.
Do you find that there's a before and an after when it came to becoming a father, and the way that you view politics, the way that you view the world, the way that you view some of the ideas that you have for Canada?
Yeah, I think so. I think when you have a kid, you you really, how do you put it? You become subservient to them in a way, and their mission has to become your mission, and you gain a different level of patience. I've never been a very patient person. I'm just not. I like things to move quickly, but with kids you can't be like that because they operate on their own clock. So she's taught me a lot about patience, and we're very blessed to have them.
Yeah, I think, yeah, absolutely. I think they teach us definitely a lot, especially Valentina with her condition, empathy, and just, we feel blessed because the things that we go through and that we learn with Valentina, sometimes I step back and I tell myself, well, I'm blessed because I have this family support. What about those who don't?
Yeah. It would be very hard because like the demands are like, sometimes she can't sleep at night.
Yeah.
And sometimes she can't go to school because she's not well that day. And so it takes a tremendous amount of time and commitment to support her. And we're very blessed to have family members that chip in and help out, because we do a lot, but they really complete the circle for us.
Yeah.
Something that I'm curious about, you met in Ottawa.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you met Ana?
Well, it's actually really quite.
We're testing it.
It's a more complicated answer because you have to define met. So we actually encountered each other 5 times before we formally met, just seeing each other around Parliament Hill. And the first time was in the Victoria building, which is a brick building across the street from Parliament Hill. And she was working for a senator at the time, and I was just walking to go to Parliament, and she walked by, and it was like I was hit by lightning. I walked out of the building and I sat in this. There's a little green bus that takes you around Parliament Hill to get to the other buildings, and I actually felt out of breath. I'm not joking. And then I saw her a second time on Spark Street next to where I just come out of the gym, and she walked by, and it was again like thunderbolt. And then the next time was in you were at was it the foyer? Was that the foyer the next time?
That must have been, yeah.
She was in the foyer. I was coming out of a caucus meeting and looked over, and like through all the media who I normally try to avoid, there she was standing waiting for her senator. And again, and I was thinking I'd love to go talk to her, but there's all these damn journalists around her. And I wish they would just go away.
So did you see him at this point? Like, had you recognized him, or was okay?
Yeah.
But then we met, finally, so all this to say, she got on an elevator without I was on, and she would just get it for coming back from the cafeteria.
Yeah.
And then I think I said, I had an incredible line. I said, "What's on for lunch today?" So we're really creative. That's so I'm not the most poetic guy.
Yeah.
That was the first time we spoke, and then we walked into the hallway off the elevator and talked for, I don't know, 15 minutes, and then I think we exchanged numbers.
You asked for my Facebook, and I said I don't have Facebook,
which turned out not to be quite true.
And then I reached out.
She reached out. We went on our first date at La Bottega de Castro, which is my favorite deli in Ottawa. And we were supposed to just get together for, I don't know what, half an hour, 45 minutes. We were there for like 3.5 hours. I got a parking ticket because we stayed so long. Then the second date was 2 days later, I think it was. And again, it went way longer than expected. So I actually missed my flight. I was supposed to fly out to Calgary. So I missed my flight, and then called her from the Ottawa airport and said, well, I missed my flight. Do you want to go out again? We have a second date the same night. And so then we met on Preston Street, and that's when we started
right away.
Rest is history.
Yeah.
And he actually wrote a poem about this to me within the first 6 months of each time. So everything he's saying is accurate, and I have the poem to prove.
Can we share that?
Not really, but.
And that was before ChatGPT, so it's not like I could have had like an AI bot write it for me.
Did you get someone to proofread it, or was it?
No, it was all me. It's all me.
Now, obviously, Ana, you're an immigrant. your family came from Venezuela, and it's a story that so many Canadians can relate to. First, I want you to talk a little bit about your story, and then perhaps, Pierre, what have you learned from her family story and that immigrant journey that so many Canadians have?
Well, we came to Canada when I was 8, 1995. It was my 2 brothers, my sister, myself, and both my parents. And we arrived in Montreal in the East End. The first month, we spent it with my dad's sister in a 1-bedroom apartment. So there was 8 of us. And then eventually we found a little basement apartment in the East End of Montreal. And my father, like, we didn't speak the language. We actually came as refugees. And so my father basically found a job picking up fruits and vegetables so that, we can pay the bills. And yeah, and then we worked really hard. And then, eventually, unfortunately, my parents divorced. My father went on to have 3 jobs at once. He'll be delivering newspapers in the morning, working at a warehouse that was making socks from 7 a.m. until 3 p.m. And then in the evenings, he would go and clean offices. So he had all of these 3 jobs, sending child support, helping my mom with the kids. So we worked really hard, and it was a big transition because back home, my mother had just finished her law degree, and my dad was a bank manager. So it was a big transition for me from going to this beautiful life, if I could say, to all of a sudden things weren't going well. I couldn't understand why, but we were leaving our country to another place. I didn't even speak the language. Now, my dad was no longer wearing business suits, but secondhand clothes. We were all wearing secondhand clothes. My mother's law degree all of a sudden was worth nothing. So I remember the struggles. It was, we were adapting a lot. And it was a lot of struggle. Again, similar to Pierre, where like if you wanted to play sports, parents couldn't really afford that. So when I was 15, when we all turned 15, like the first thing we all did was go and find a job. So I worked at McDonald's as my first job. And that was because I wanted to be able to play sports. And if I wanted to do that, I had to pay for it myself. Eventually, by the time that I was 17, I had moved out and become 100% financially independent. And I had to pitch in as well and help my mom whenever I could. And then by the time that I was 19, I decided to move to Ottawa for my education. So we have like a little bit of a similar upbringing in that sense. And I think that's why we connected right away. It was you had to work for everything that you have.
Absolutely. And you bring up an interesting point because similar to my family, I mean, my dad was an engineer back home from one of the best universities, and he came here trying to find a safe future for his kids. But you get here, you land at Pearson, and all of a sudden, what now?
Yes.
Your certifications are not valid. You don't have any connections, and you're just trying to make ends meet. How can we support those immigrants that are coming in and they have these big dreams for their families so that they're not having to sacrifice their careers?
That's one of the things we need to do. We have the problem we have is that immigrant credentials aren't recognized in Canada. We have these occupational licensing bodies that shut out newcomers or even Canadian-born kids who get trained abroad. They can't come back and get working even when they are qualified. Yeah, I like to tell the story of when I got my eye surgery. I met the technician at the clinic, and he's works as a surgeon in the UAE, even though we only let him work as a technician. So then I went back a year later for my checkup. I found that there were 5 different doctors from abroad working as technicians at this one clinic. Well, in his case, he's doing eye surgeries in the most advanced country in the world, the United Arab Emirates. But we don't let him do that here in Canada. So apparently Emirati eyeballs are different than Canadian eyeballs somehow. We've got 20,000 immigrant doctors, 32,000 immigrant nurses that can't work. 85% of Filipino nurses cannot work in nursing in Canada. In the States, they take an international exam and they can get working within a few months. Here it's 7 or 8 years, but you don't have 7 or 8 years. You have to pay the bills. So then they end up taking low wage work and they never ever get their profession back. And meanwhile, we have shortages of these very professions, particularly in healthcare. So we have an obvious solution, which is to set up a Blue Seal standard, which is a skills-based test to show that they can live up to our standard. And then when they take the test, they can get a stamp, and I'm going to be pushing the provinces to recognize the Blue Seal so that it would be fully portable. Actually, even Canadian doctors can't move around seamlessly because we don't have a national license. We've got it in the trades, so we just need to do it in the professions. We're also going to create a small micro loan program, giving small loans that allow immigrant professionals to take, 2-3 months off work to study up to hit the Blue Seal. They've done these through charities in Alberta, for example, 97% repayment rate. And then the people end up seeing their incomes go up by like 300-400% because they go from being a barista or a Uber driver to being an engineer or an architect in 4 months. Because they were already an engineer and architect, they just needed to get validated. And so that I think would be a huge springboard for a lot of immigrant professionals.
Your dad was an engineer?
Engineers.
Right,
Yeah,
there you go.
that would be applicable in that sense.
The other thing is we should allow them to start working on the Blue Seal before they even get here. So if they know they want to be an immigrant to Canada or an economic stream while they're waiting, should be modules for every licensed profession for them to start preparing and maybe even take the test before they arrive. So these are some just very common sense things we need to do.
Would it be enforced by companies that are hiring? Because I find that there's always a bit of hesitancy maybe to hire someone that doesn't have that Canadian experience or has been at a Canadian company for X amount of years. Is there a way to help them out in that regard?
Well, licensing is really it's really run by these colleges of the professions. Employers, I think the smart employers will hire the best people, and they'll hunt down the best talent. And over time, those barriers do break down. Like when I do about 500 or 600 business visits a year, like mid-sized businesses, 300, 400, 500 people, employees. And I'm seeing increasingly a lot of very bright immigrant CEOs and presidents who are running these companies and doing very well. So it's always hard when you go to a new place. You don't have a network, you don't have friends, you can't call your Uncle Jack and say, do you know somebody over at ABC company and get me an interview? But over time, these barriers break down. And that's one of the things Canada, I think, used to do really well, is integrating people, making them feel welcome in neighborhoods and companies. And I think we need to build on that.
And we've heard you speak a lot about crime, finding a way to solve it in Canada. There's something that stood out to me recently that I read about, which was this concept of crime tourism. Is there any plan to potentially find a way to stop this, or to make sure that the people that we are letting into this country are being properly vetted?
Well, what's amazing is we actually in Canada have not been doing true criminal background checks on people. So it's funny, the Trudeau government was asked, do you do criminal background checks? I said, well, sure. And what they meant was they look at our criminal registry and see if the person has committed a crime in Canada. Well, of course not. They haven't been in Canada. So obviously they're not in our crime records. What we need to do is criminal background checks in the country of origin, vet them for any background they might have over there. And we should just have a non-admissibility policy for anyone who has any serious crime in their background. But right now, believe it or not, the government does not do that. And we've got to close that down. We've got to stop the insanity at our borders. We'll start scanning our shipping containers that come in to stop the drugs, the guns, the stolen cars. We have to deport people if they commit offenses while they're here on visitor visas. Immediately deport them. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to get back to a common sense border and immigration policy that puts our country first.
Now, I want to talk to you about affordability. That is a big topic, especially for people my age that are dreaming of starting a family, owning a home. You've mentioned removing the GST for some new homes. Can you give us a tangible difference that a Canadian my age would feel 1-2 years into a Poilievre government?
So we will get rid of the sales tax on new homes up to $1.3 million. So that will save you up to 65 grand. We'll also incentivize municipalities to speed up permits, free up land, and cut development taxes. So we have to understand, if I could step back for a sec, why housing is so expensive, and so much more expensive in Canada than almost anywhere else in the world. Because really, it makes no sense. We have more land than almost any country in the world, including close to our big cities, including close to the southern border where the population lives. So why isn't housing dirt cheap? And the answer is government. We have in Ontario today, a third of the cost of a new home is direct taxes. So that's the sales tax, land transfer tax, and development taxes by municipalities. Then another roughly 20% is soft government costs, delays, consultants, lobbyists, lawyers, accountants, all of which you need just to get the permit to put the shovel in the ground. If we could cut that cost, we would have very affordable housing. So, like I said, I'm going to take the sales tax off, but I'm also going to be imposing new conditions on municipalities that get federal infrastructure money, that they have to do rapid permitting, they have to cut their development charges. I will be doing an announcement in the next several days that will massively incentivize them to cut their development taxes by tens and tens of thousands of dollars. And then I'm going to sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land to convert to housing so that we can increase the supply. Prices are set by supply and demand. We have the fewest homes per capita of any country in the G7, even though we have the most land to build on. So when you go out as a young person to buy a home, you're competing with a lot of other people on a very scarce number of homes. The relief that you ultimately are going to get is when we have more homes. And so I do see rent will be coming down. We'll be moderating mortgage payments, and incomes will outgrow housing costs again. That's necessary because look, the Liberal decade for housing has been a total disaster on housing. They promised to create these pie-in-the-sky government programs that are going to make housing affordable. They've been doing that for 3 election cycles now, and it has only made it more expensive. We don't need more bureaucracy, more government spending. What we need is governments to get out of the way and off the backs of home builders so that we can add millions of new affordable homes for the next generation to buy.
Population growth too.
Well, we have to cap population growth. We're being honest about it. We're growing our population at 3% while we grow our housing stock at 1%. That's mathematically impossible and unsustainable. We added 1.2 million people last year. We added 250,000 homes. It's not possible. So we will be capping immigration at a level that ensures we always add homes at a faster rate than we add people.
And that's assuming that, the young people can afford a down payment and can afford to save up, because I think that a lot of the concern is, great, the homes will be cheaper, but how am I even going to have enough at the end of my paycheck? So is there any kind of strategy in place to maybe support those people that do dream of owning a house, but they might not have someone to call to say, hey, can you help me with the down payment?
Well, what kind of support do you have in mind?
That's why I'm asking you.
The question I ask myself, let's step back for a second here. Why can't young people afford a down payment in the first place? When our friend, I tell the story over and over again, my friend Tony came from Italy in 1973 as a little boy. His dad never spoke English, worked paving roads, mom made sandwiches at seniors' homes. They bought a home in 2 years and paid it off in 7 in downtown Ottawa. That was 50 years ago. How is it that a construction worker, a construction laborer, and a worker at a senior's home could do that then, but their grandkids can't now? What's going on? The system is fundamentally broken. Part of it is massive government money printing that inflates asset values and waters down the purchasing power of our wage-earning people. Young people live off wages because they haven't had time to build up assets. So naturally, the youth are being totally screwed over by our system, which causes perpetual inflation and dilutes the purchasing power of their wages. So we have to stop that. We have to stop creating more cash and start creating more of what cash buys. That's to say, build more homes, grow more food, produce more energy, so that our money actually goes further. The reason I asked you at the outset is what kind of support you want. If we could write every young person $1 million check, think about it. Let's say we write everybody $1 million check, go buy a home. Well, all the young people would go out with their $1 million check, and they would bid on the same scarce number of houses, and those houses would go up by $1 million in price. So just giving money out is what we've been doing, but that money isn't the valuable thing. The valuable thing in this place is the walls, the roof, the floors.
To be back at money printing, and that's what caused the problem in the first place. So when I was 25, I was able to purchase a townhouse and I had a job. I was working in the Senate. I was making about maybe 50,000, between 50 and 55,000 that I was making for Senator Belmar. I was 25. I had saved enough money, about $25,000. And that's all I needed back then in 2012 to put a down payment on a Littleton house that was worth $230,000. So back then you could buy a house, and that was the normal rule. I worked for ING Bank of Canada, which is now known as Tangerine. And that was the rule. The rule would be when you look at someone to know that if you qualify, it's about 4 times their income, right? Nowadays, that's impossible. The median, I think the median salary is around 75, 76,000, but the houses are like 1.1 million. So you're talking more than 10 times the income of one person, which is impossible. So what comes down to is I don't think people need help with the down payment. I think what we need is to get back at a more same level playing field where like the cost of housing and powerful paychecks. And for that, what we need is to bring productivity back in the country and building more homes.
Yeah, like simply put, we have to create more of what money buys rather than just creating more.
Cutting taxes so that people keep more money also.
Yeah,
So that
and
they
then
pay
we
the
are
mortgage.
going to be cutting taxes. We'll be cutting income tax by 15%. And that's different than just giving people free money, because when you cut taxes, particularly income tax, you're rewarding people for earning it. And it incentivizes people to go out and work harder and achieve more and produce more stuff. And that's how we're going to overcome this. We've had 10 years of the government saying, well, we'll just spend money like crazy and somehow all these riches will fall from the heavens. Well, it's not real. It's just fake. And they have devalued the buying power of our money to the detriment, in particular, of our youth, our immigrants, and our working class. It's very good for the billionaires and the multinationals because all of their assets keep going up and up and up. And that's why we have such a brutal gap between rich and poor.
Yeah, more government is not the solution.
No, not at all.
I was able to do it when I was 25 without the help of the government. We just need to get back to that.
So we've spoken about the young generation. There's another generation in Canada that is struggling, and it's, of course, our seniors. Canada is an aging population, and we see more and more people hoping to stop working, but they perhaps haven't saved up enough, or they don't have a home that they own where they can just retire and finally enjoy their retirement. How can we support that? I mean, if in the next few years, 30% of the population decides, okay, it's time to step back, is there a plan in place under a Poilievre government to help them retire?
Well, what we proposed is, for example, let seniors who want to keep their RSPs longer, growing more, they can do that till age 73 from 71. They're also going to benefit from the income tax cut. I propose a 15% income tax cut, and that will apply on retirement income like pensions and RSP withdrawals. For those seniors who want to keep working, because there are a small number that choose to work because they enjoy it, they have something to offer, they have time in their day, and they want some pocket change, we're proposing to let them earn $34,000 a year tax-free. That's $10,000 higher than now. That will save about $1,500 extra. But like with our youth, we need to build more homes. We need to build, in the case of seniors, a lot of them want to downsize into apartments. We need to get the governments out of the way to let builders build affordable apartment complexes. And that way the rent won't be such a bite out of their pensions. Because right now that's what's killing a lot of seniors. They move out of their homes, but they go into these apartments and they're paying $2,600, $2,700 a month, which is insane for rent. And when you look at the OAS, GIS, CPP, and a modest pension, there's nothing left to pay if you're paying 30 grand a year in rent. So it's this kind of the same problem that youth have. We have to stop the inflationist government and start reinforcing the power of paycheck and pensions.
I want to be mindful of your time. There are a few questions that I really want to get to.
Sure.
You have been in politics for well over 2 decades.
Mm-hmm.
I find that people change even from a year, 2 years, 3 years. Is there anything that you have changed your stance on looking back in those past 20 years?
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot of things. My core beliefs, like particularly my economic philosophy that I've been talking about with you today, that has been very constant. Like if you go back to my university essay. There was a scholarship contest as prime minister. I would, and basically I wrote that we needed a free enterprise economy with low taxes that rewarded entrepreneurs and workers, and that's sort of the same message that I have today. There have been, like, on my economic ideas, there have been obviously some finessing and some rough edges shaved off, but the core belief system, my overall philosophy, is just that I want people to be in charge of their own lives. I've never accepted this idea that there is this aristocratic elite that knows how to run our lives better than we do. That, oh, you have this expert class and they're just so brilliant, they can tell us what we should be eating and what we should think and what we should read and what we should say and how our money should be spent. That really is kind of the ideology of my opponent, Mark Carney and the Liberals. They want to run everybody's lives. I don't want to run people's lives. I want to run a government that does a few things right rather than a lot of things poorly. I don't think I have any particular qualification to tell you how to live. If I were starting a political party from scratch today, it would be called the Mind Your Own Damn Business Party, because I think the government should just mind its business and leave people alone. And that has been kind of consistent my entire political career.
Something I've noticed with this election is that there is a lot of social media. There are a lot of comments. There are a lot of concerns. I want to get your reaction. You know, some people have said that you can be a bit aggressive or polarizing. They have drawn comparisons to Donald Trump. What is your reaction to people who have that perception of you?
Well, you know, I think it's probably because I believe very strongly in what I say and what I'm fighting for. I do get frustrated when I see people in positions of power doing damage to the lives of good people. When I see, you know, when I see that, you know, an entire generation can't afford a place to live, and I know this is entirely the result of political and bureaucratic decisions. This is not an accident. It's not a problem that fell out of the sky. I have an intense desire for those people who caused the problem to be held accountable for it. And, you know, there are places in the world where politicians all get along. They're not nice places. They're terrible places, right? There are places in the world where there's only one political party. They're very nonpartisan in the sense that they're all in the same party. And people flee from those places. Yeah. So, you know, if you have to choose between a place where political debate gets a little heated once in a while and a place where there is no political debate, I know which one I'm choosing. And that there's going to be a lot of attacks that come my way because I'm challenging a lot of established interests. And they have a lot of money and power, and they prefer to keep things just the way they are.
I don't see the comparison.
I don't see
I don't see it because, like, Pierre doesn't come from money, contrary to Donald Trump or Mr. Carney. Like, such a different background, such a different upbringing. So the fact that my husband is passionate about his convictions, I've always seen as a positive thing. I don't know if it's because I'm Latina, where I want to see the fire in the belly and feel it.
Yeah.
But if you look at his background, where he comes from, everything that he's done, I don't see the comparison at all.
And I think people want someone who's going to fight for them too. Like it's tough out there, and they want someone who cares about their lives and is prepared to fight to make them better. And it's not going to be easy. The changes that are required are not going to be easy. They're going to require somebody with a backbone.
I just think I liked your line when you said, I think in Canada we just have been polite for too long. I think that's maybe what's shaking some people, because you are willing to stand up and say the things out loud that need to be said. And maybe it's in our Canadian temperament to, you know, don't say it too loud, maybe.
Exactly.
I think that's more what it is.
I think there are some ways in which we do need to be a little bit more blunt in this country.
Yeah.
Because it's not going well. And there's a lot of people suffering because of really bad decisions by powerful people. And I believe that's our parliamentary system. It was created as an adversarial system where the most powerful people in the world are meant to tremble when they walk into the House of Commons because they are going to be grilled for the decisions that they made. I think that's a good thing.
One last question. Tomorrow you wake up, you're prime minister. What is the first thing that you're doing?
Good luck.
There's a lot of things we'll be doing very, very quickly. Yeah. We're going to fully axe the carbon tax. We're going to repeal the anti-energy laws. We're going to pass a massive crackdown on crime. And we're going to put in place very powerful incentives to get housing built. And I mean, all of those things are going to happen immediately because they can't wait. So I know you asked for one, but you got four for the price of one there. There's so much to do, so much to fix, so much to change, and for the better.
We're going to do a quick fire round with you.
All right.
What was the last non-political book that you read?
Last non-political book that I read.
Not the Greek myth, the mythology.
Oh yeah, Mythos by Stephen Fry. Very good book, actually. It's basically, he's such a, I don't know if you know who he is, but Stephen Fry is a British author, artist, and he's a master of the classics, but he writes the classical Greek stories in highly accessible and extremely entertaining language. And so I recommend it to anyone. It's not a light read, but if you ever want to know the Greek classics and read it in a fun way, it's a great book. It's called Mythos.
I'm going to have to read that one.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
Last movie you watched?
What was the last movie we watched?
We have not been watching movies.
We haven't been watching a lot of movies lately.
No.
And you think, what was the last time we watched a movie?
Oh, goodness.
We're just working all the time.
He's been traveling for 3 years. So that's our sad life over here where we don't watch movies.
What about music? Are you teaching him any J Balvin, Bad Bunny?
She has her Latin music going all the time.
It's so funny because I always have Latin music all the time. So he has no idea of the artist, the lyrics, or anything. But then he makes up words. Like just right now, you're making up words that I was translating to you in English how silly you sound.
Right. Well,
He
what are
goes,
they?
uno poquito, pollito, pollito.
Well, I put silly English words into her Spanish music, and but I don't understand any of her music because it's not in English.
He seems to like it. He makes up words for it and he sings it. So
You'll get there at one point. Now is not the time to be learning Spanish.
yeah. No.
What is your favorite Canadian vacation spot?
The Okanagan.
We were just there.
Yeah. I love the Okanagan. It's beautiful. We used to vacation
That
there
was
as kids.
childhood, yeah.
We used to go to Penticton, but
Have you been?
I have not yet.
You have to
Oh, it's very
go.
beautiful.
Wineries,
Beautiful.
mountains, beautiful.
Sign me up.
yeah, it's like a desert climate, but there are beautiful lakes, and it's a really special place. Very nice wineries and biking, and
Yeah.
it's a great race. It's dry.
Yeah.
And the last time you got 8 hours of sleep?
Definitely not on this campaign, eh?
Definitely not.
And then when work is quiet, the kids are not. So
Yeah.
we don't really get
We sleep
8
like
hours.
5 to 6 hours a night.
5 to 6 hours is what we get for now. We make up for it with caffeine. So thank you
go.
for thinking of us.
That's
Usually mine is a strong coffee.
Well, we've got that too.
Oh,
Here.
good.
Anna, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your story and your vision for Canada.
Thank you so
All right. Thanks very much for having us. It was fun.
much.